What is up, guys, and welcome back to another video. So in today's video, what we're going to be doing is discussing how to gain arena points fast in Fortnite Chapter 3 Season 3. This video is going to cover all the baseline stuff you're going to need to know in order to maximize your point gain as well as improve at Fortnite overall in Chapter 3 Season 3. Before we get into it though, be sure to drop a like on the video if it helps you out, subscribe if you're new and want to see more content just like this in the future, and if you want to help your boy out even more, then consider using code TECHO in the Fortnite item shop as it's 100% free and it really helps me out a ton. But with that said, and without further ado, let's get into today's video. So hopping right into this video, what I want to start out with is a bit of baseline information and just some general knowledge that you're going to need to know regarding the actual setup of Arena. Starting off, the first thing you're going to need to know about is the preseason. If you don't know, with every new season comes a competitive preseason where basically arena points remain the same. So they're going to stay the exact same as the previous season, and basically what this is meant to do is give players the opportunity to learn the new meta and for Epic to make any changes that need to be made before the season properly starts up in terms of competitive. So essentially, if you're watching this at the start of Season 3, just keep in mind that arena points are going to reset to 0 on June 21st, which is just over 2 weeks into the season. And of course, if you're watching this later in the season, then just disregard that. The next point you're going to want to consider is the point system for Season 3. And as of the time of making this video, it looks like the point system has remained the exact same once again. Keep in mind that this could change a little bit when points are reset, but I'm expecting the point system to remain mostly the same personally, as it does seem to be working pretty well. I've covered the point system in previous videos, so I won't go too in depth, but the basic idea is that as you rank up, elimination points are worth less. And points for one elimination are actually the same for solos, duos, and trios once you reach champs, which means that team game modes pretty much become OP as you rank up, since obviously getting one kill as a trio is way easier than getting one as a solo. And if you want to see the exact point system for each game mode as of now, I'll go ahead and put screenshots up. This one right here is the solo point system, then this is the duo point system, and then here's the point system for trios. So with all that information in mind, the next big question for arena players is which game mode is going to be the best for my road to champs and beyond? And the answer to that question from a purely statistical standpoint is 100% going to be trios. Trios are just wildly overpowered in terms of points, and killing one team as a trio in Champions League is equal to 3 individual players as a solo or duo. Placement points also tend to be relatively easy when you have a full team, and overall I just find that virtually all the top arena players use trios to grind as many points as possible. However, I do want to mention that this does get a little bit more complicated in Season 3, and I wanted to address why. Basically, this season has a ton of tournaments, but the main competitive emphasis is on duos. Season 3 has a ton of duo cups going on. FNCS is supposed to be duos, and the FNCS Invitational LAN in November is also a duo tournament. And that one has over $1 million in prizes, so it's a huge deal. So with almost all the major tournaments being in duos format, and duos still being the second best option in terms of pure point gain, I wanted to mention that if you're a competitive player, then you might want to consider the possibility of focusing on duo arena rather than trios, solely for the fact that your practice is more specific to the tournaments that you're trying to get into. While that won't apply to everybody, the concept is something to consider if you're trying to pursue playing competitive this season. So overall, the ranking of arena game modes from best to worst is going to be trios, duos, and then solos. So getting into the main part of today's video, I'm actually going to continue by talking about the strategies and tips that will help you gain arena points quickly. Now that we know that trios is the best game mode for points and we know the basics of the point system, we're going to want to focus on playstyle, and the ultimate goal is to optimize your playstyle to match your skill set and goals. So the first thing you're going to want to consider when it comes to playstyle is obviously going to be your teammates. That's because you really can't optimize your playstyle or strategy unless you actually know who you're playing with, and since trios is the best game mode for points, I would recommend you try to find 2 consistent teammates to play with before we even begin to talk about playstyle. If you already have teammates, then that's fantastic and continue on, but if you don't, then I would urge you to start looking. If you need a place to find teammates, feel free to check out my Discord server, which is going to be linked near the top of the description. All you've got to do is select your region, and then you're going to gain access to looking for group chats where you can find teammates for arena, as well as tournaments, regular games, 1v1s, or whatever else. Of course, you can also feel free to mix things up a bit and play with multiple people, but it's important that you have a basic understanding of their playstyles and know how to play together properly. That way you can actually adjust your playstyle and play to the best of your ability. Assuming you actually know who you're playing with and have some level of consistency, the next step is going to be figuring out whether you're passive, aggressive, or somewhere in between. Now starting off here, you're going to want to start by considering the skill sets of your team. If you're not as mechanically skilled as a team and you're better on the game sense side of things, then you're probably going to want to opt for a more passive to moderate playstyle. That's going to allow you to maximize your placement points, and then you can start fighting in endgame to gather a few eliminations and close out the game. On the other hand, if your team consists of people like me who are really good in fights and like to play aggressive, then the obvious choice is to play more aggressive. And if there's a decent mix on your team, if you have a mix of players who like to play aggressive and passive, then you have two options. You can either find a middle ground type of playstyle, for example, something like landing at a quiet spot and only pushing in mid game and end game, or you could alternate more passive and aggressive playstyles each game. And by doing that, you'll basically get a good mix of practice, so some games you'll play passive and some games you'll play aggressive, obviously. Regardless of which of these options you choose, your ultimate goal should be to determine the playstyle that works best to take advantage of your skill set and those of your teammates. The next topic of discussion in this video is going to be where to land. Now, a lot of this is going to depend on what your actual playstyle is, whether you're trying to be aggressive, passive, or somewhere in between. By this point, you should have a general idea of how you and presumably your trio are going to play, but without a proper early game strategy, you won't even have the chance to gain points. That's why it's so important, because if you die off spawn, you pretty much just lose 60 points or whatever your bus fare is, and then it's over. Your early game strategy is going to largely depend on your overall playstyle, but the biggest priority should be the following. Those include getting good loot, remaining alive, and getting eliminations. The getting good loot part is pretty self-explanatory, and that basically entails all sorts of things you have, such as weapons, mobility, materials, and all that. Your spot is going to need to support everyone on your team, so you can obviously get away with smaller edge map locations as a solo, but as a trio, you're probably going to have to land at a POI or a really good split. The next two parts are remaining alive and getting eliminations, and those are pretty much going to go hand in hand. In a perfect world, you would get at least some eliminations off spawn, you would leave with good loot, and you'd rotate out to focus on whatever your playstyle is like. The only concern here is that you have to balance the two. If you landed a super hot drop, you have the potential for a ton of eliminations, but your odds of dying are pretty much exponential. On the other end of the spectrum, a silent spot gives you plenty of time to loot and farm, and you're almost certainly going to survive into mid game, but you'll end up leaving with no kills, and if you die in your first fight, it's basically over and you lose a bunch of points. So obviously both of those sides of the coin have their own advantages and disadvantages, and the ultimate goal is to balance that out. So ultimately, the goal here is to figure out where your general playstyle is as a team, and then find a good drop spot to match it. I know a lot of you are probably wondering which exact spots to choose based on your playstyle, so I wanted to also give you a few ideas. If you're an ultra aggressive team and you're trying to push everybody, then you're probably going to want to land somewhere close to the center of the map or somewhere that has a lot of mobility, and you're also going to want to have as many players as possible landing there. A few good ideas for that type of playstyle might include Tilted Towers, Rave Cave, Greasy Grove, or Coney Crossroads. If you're somewhere in the middle in terms of playstyle, you're not too passive, not too aggressive, then you're probably going to want to land at a named POI that isn't too busy. You'll want to fight a few teams, but you wouldn't want to be overwhelmed. A few good ideas for that might be Sleepy Sound, Shifty Shafts, or Rocky Reels. And lastly, if you want to play passive and focus primarily on placement points, then you're going to want to focus on edge map spots with minimal people. These could include Synapse Station, the Joneses, or you can even split unnamed spots like the islands east of Sanctuary, the mountain region north of Logjam, or the area around Sunny Steps. When you finish up the early game and you move into the mid game, everything becomes really simple. You can either play passive and play toward the quiet areas of the map that nobody's rotating into, or you can play more aggressive and try to find packed areas and pick up a lot of fights. Or if you're somewhere in the middle, you can focus on third-partying fights or finding people in the more quiet areas where you won't run into multiple teams. In Arena, I would argue that mid-game and end-game are pretty much the same exact thing, and there's pretty much no difference in terms of playstyle between the two. So whichever type of playstyle you're focusing on, you'll simply want to continue that throughout the entire game, and you're going to want to focus on gathering either placement points, elimination points, or a mixture of both, depending on how your team prefers to approach it. But with all that said, guys, that's going to wrap it up for today's video on how to gain arena points fast in Fortnite Chapter 3 Season 3. Overall, the process of gaining points is really simple. Find a good trio that you can play well with, adjust your level of aggression depending on how you and your teammates prefer to play, find a landing spot that matches that playstyle, and play to your strengths throughout the mid-game and end-game. If you follow all the steps in this video, you should be well on your way to reaching Champions League and beyond while improving at the game this season. If this video did help you out, then be sure to drop a like on it and consider subscribing as well if you want to see more content just like this in the future. I'm trying to get videos out every single day for the new season, so you definitely won't want to miss out, so be sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. As well as that, if you want to help out a bit extra, then consider using code TECHO in the Fortnite item shop, as it's 100% free and it really helps me out a bunch. Thank you all for watching this video though, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye for now.